Welcome, everyone. Today is Thursday, the 5th of October, 2023, and this is the SIG Cloud Provider Extraction Migration sub-meeting. This is a sub-project of Kubernetes SIGs, and as such, we follow their meeting guidance, which basically means please treat each other as you would expect to be treated. There's only three of us, so we probably can do away with the raising hands. We have a couple topics on the agenda today. One is more of a kind of a service announcement. So we've merged the update to our KEP, and I guess we are now officially in beta state for migration as of 1.29. So thanks to everybody who helped out with that, and like it's cool to see us kind of like moving on a little bit further here. Were there any questions or comments about that? Okay. And the other topic we had, Larock is a relatively new member to the SIG, and he's been coming to some of our meetings, and he's been looking for tasks to pick up for the group he's working on. So Larock, please take it away.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm The Rocks. I have a group I formed. It's probably I'll say 5 members now that's looking to contribute, and I'm looking to like lead them. And if anybody have like tasks that needs to be done, I have a couple people who could do document. I have a couple coders, so I'm just looking for tasks for them. That's about it.
Okay. I think that's good to know. I personally don't necessarily have like an immediate task that I could say, go jump on this. I think, Larock, you and I have been talking a little bit on Slack. And I think there's like one activity we were talking around getting in touch with more cloud providers to figure out if there's a way that we could get more providers participating in the credit system, or if we could somehow extend, that testing basically to run on more clouds. So that would be one thing, but that doesn't necessarily require a whole group. I am also trying to work on a testing like experiment. If that goes well, there will be some work to do there that potentially I could, you and I could kind of sync up and we could collaborate on more tests to be converted. But I'm probably still at least another couple weeks away from getting that out because I got kind of interrupted by some other things. I don't know, Walter or Nick, do either of you have thoughts about this?
I mean, probably the best thing to do would be to start running, cluster. Like the problem is the expense, but if you can start, this is SIG Cloud Provider, so we're responsible for cloud provider integrations. But if you can start running those integrations and just, seeing what works for you and what doesn't, where documentation needs to be improved, like approaching it from a user, is probably the best way to understand where you can help. I know the documentation is not, great. So you're going to try to start running stuff and you're going to not know exactly what needs to happen. And then once you ask questions and figure out how it works, you can improve documentation from there. And then once you have, actually been operating it, then you can find bugs and fix them.
I mean, so I think there are two perspectives on what Nick just said. I think they're both useful, but I think it's worth mentioning the other perspective on what Nick said. We can talk about new cloud providers coming, getting onboarding cloud providers, getting our documentation better for users. But the other thing is you are uniquely set up, Larock, for what I would call new contributor experience for cloud provider, which is important to us. So don't just think about the end user, think about you. Like, what could we do better to make joining this SIG easier? That's also really important. And you probably have a better feeling for that than anyone else in this room. So, play to your strengths. The other thing I will mention, and this one gets a little challenging in part just because everyone here is a volunteer, and it's always difficult getting people to volunteer for things if it doesn't align with something they're doing. But Nick did a bunch of work to get webhooks working in the CCM, and that was in effort of getting one particular fix out, one particular bit of code out of the API server. And so, coordinating that with the cloud providers who actually need to get that work done, which might be Nick and I, might be one other thing you could look at.
Okay. Can you elaborate more on the new contributor aspect of it? Is that just like writing new codes for people who want to use the cloud providers, who want to like test, like play with it?
I mean, it could be that, but the big thing is if we look at, so if I look at the various SIGs, each of them have this problem. So I'm kind of going to look at both the general problem and the SIG Cloud Provider version of the problem. There are 5 people in this room. There are more than 5 cloud providers. And
2 of us don't even represent a cloud provider.
Yeah, 2 of you don't even represent a cloud provider. Although, at least to be fair to Almico, he may not represent a cloud provider, but he kind of represents cloud provider customers very well, in that the product he works on has to work specifically with multiple cloud providers. So in some ways, he may be better for this SIG than any of the rest of us. But we know that there are a lot of cloud providers, and there are a lot of cloud provider customers. So I mean, and one of the funny things is we moved this SIG specifically because some of the cloud providers are in Asia, but none of the Asian cloud providers are represented in this. I'm not even sure any of the Asian cloud provider customers are in this, and so as a specific problem, we make a change. How do folks like Huawei actually find out about it? How do they get up to it? How do they get a voice in some of the CCMware stuff we're doing? Like Nick and I will, hand on heart, representing 2 of the big cloud providers, tell you that we believe adding webhooks, we had a discussion in this SIG, and we believe it was the right choice to make. But there wasn't a single Asian cloud provider in the room when we were having that discussion, and they essentially got no say in it, right? And so how do we encourage other cloud providers and contributors who might be, I mean, as an example, not to throw too much shade at Amazon, bad Walter. If I look at one of the primary contributors for the Amazon cloud provider historically, it's a guy named Justin Santa Barbara, who works for Google.
He didn't always work for Google. Let's be clear about that.
It's true, but he's still a pretty significant contributor. But I mean, the point is, just because you don't work for the given cloud provider doesn't mean you can't contribute, right? But it is more difficult to contribute if you're coming in from the outside, if you can't find the right documentation, if you don't have starting lines, if you're like, where do I go for the SIG? Where do I go for the meetings? Who should I talk to? Where's the chat? Where's the code? What's a good first project, right? And I will point out, these are all good questions. They're all the right questions. They're the questions you're asking. And this is why I think that you are uniquely suited, as you get those answers, to think about how we, the SIG, could have done a better job helping you and helping us to fix the things that would have made your life easier.
And can I ask what perspective you're coming in from? Are you working for a cloud provider, a student, just interested? Like what sort of a background do you have?
Let's say I'm just interested. I studied like the DevOps process, and I used to contribute Agora, I think it's called, is the Google Kubernetes game server. That's what really taught me Kubernetes. Mm-hmm. So I'm really coming into it as like a project manager, product owner type role. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm really trying to get into.
Got it.
So, Larock, I would say, first of all, I totally agree with everything Walter said. I think, like, if you do anything this afternoon, maybe once the recording is up, go back and rewatch what Walter said, because I think what he said was really crucial. Like, you're coming into this with a perspective that's very important, in that you can take this new contributor kind of experience and codify it as you go, right? You can figure out where we have stumbling blocks that could be fixed. I think, like, part of the complication around, just showing up at like SIG Cloud Provider and saying, hey, like, I've got some people that can do work, like, where can I start working now? Is that, like Walter and Nick are kind of mentioning, every cloud provider is represented differently in the code that they create in their cloud provider implementation, right? And not all of them come to this meeting to participate. Not this meeting isn't even in a good time for some of them to participate. So from a new user perspective, diving right in, if we were a different project and you said, oh, I got some people, we might have a whole bunch of open PRs or open issues where we could say, here's code you could look at tomorrow. You could start trying to make a fix for. Here's documentation that needs updating. But we're not necessarily in that position. So I think, like, some of the comments here about, like, starting to run, use the new user material we have now, the documentation we have now, like, can you go to the Kubernetes documentation and do a migration from an in-tree provider to an out-of-tree provider? If you feel comfortable doing that stuff, then it's like, okay, you could start to triage, is our documentation there sufficient enough that an end user feels comfortable migrating from in tree to out of tree? And if not, what can we do to make it better? You could also do the same thing by reaching out to individual cloud providers. Now, luckily we have representatives for AWS and Google here, but several of the cloud providers who don't make it to these meetings, it would probably be useful to have representatives from the SIG reaching out to them and doing this kind of outreach to say, hey, I tried to run the instructions in your repo. I wasn't able to migrate properly. Like, should I open issues next? Do you want us to open PRs? And so if you've got some people who are willing to kind of do that work, that's a great way to start doing this. And yes, it doesn't mean you're opening PRs tomorrow, but you're building the experience that will help you to open PRs, like, whenever you see something wrong and whenever you come across it. So you're kind of setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, I think that's yeah, if you want to do more of the project management and, like, not necessarily coding, then I think that would be helpful for us. But I could also see, other cloud providers just not responding. Like, they may not be invested, right? So this could just be a dead end where you go out, you reach out, they don't respond, and then you're like, what's next? So I want to provide an alternative approach, which is the kind of setting it up and running it yourself. And one option there is you could actually look at building a cloud provider. It doesn't have to be like a real cloud provider, but you could do, like, hey, I'm going to buy some Raspberry Pis and build a cloud provider that works on, I don't know what it would be, but like something like that. Or you can run the AWS cloud provider. The only problem is, like, you have to spend a little bit of money when you're running actual cloud providers. So if you can get, if you were in the position where you were at a university or something, maybe you could get a little funding for that project or something like that. But if you're just doing this by yourself, then you'd have to, like, set up a AWS account or Google account or whatever you choose to use, and just get the time, invest the time so that you actually understand the problems that users are facing, and understand how the cloud provider works. But I'm not saying that, if you want to just jump into the project management aspect, then what Walter and Elmiko suggested is definitely good as well.
Yeah,
just want to give you options.
Yeah, Nick, you're totally jogging my memory too. And I was kind of flipping through the screens here quickly. Antonio Ojea wrote a cloud provider for Kind. And this is like a really easy way to start experimenting and playing with this stuff, because Kind you can run on your laptop. You could start running this Kind cloud provider on your laptop, and then you don't need any sort of cloud resources at all. You could start exploring the cloud provider interface and how it works. So, for you or the people you're working with, if what Nick is talking about sounds interesting, this is another way to start doing it like this afternoon or whatever.
Yeah, and just as a sort of a reference, a way to reference, think about it, at least the way I do. I tend to think of Kind as being the bare metal or the local resource cloud provider.
Okay, I hear everybody, and I like the ideas I'm hearing too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, cool. Like Larock, thank you for continually reaching out and pushing to like learn more. Like it's definitely it makes a difference and it'll be helpful for us. So thank you as well.
And as you have questions, you can post them in the Cloud Provider Slack channel and make sure you tag people, because otherwise I don't think they'll respond. But if you tag like the people that you see in these meetings, then you'll probably get a response.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
All right, cool. Anything else on that topic? Because we only got about 10 minutes left. Does anybody have other topics they'd like to bring up?
I was just gonna ask, I know my coworker Kirthan was working on the kind of next phase of the webhook feature. Did anyone get a chance to review that PR? I owe him a review as well, but I'll just throw it in the channel if nobody's looked at it recently.
I haven't, but yeah, please throw it in the channel. I need to go take a look at it.
Yeah, ditto here. I looked at it once, but I didn't really give it a review.
Okay, sounds good.
So one of the things we had been discussing and was the idea of reaching out to Ben the Elder about doing a run of the testing with the actual cloud provider code disabled in the binaries. I was wondering if we had any progress on that. And if you're talking, Almiko, you're muted.
Not that I know of. I haven't heard anything about that. I remember us talking about it, but no, I have no follow-up there. So we probably need to poke him again or something.
Okay. He's actually, I think he's on my floor. So if there's a particular person who, like, would you be a good person, Almiko?
Sorry, what was that?
So the idea was to actually switch some of the existing test runs rather than using the default binaries, was to use the binaries with the exclude cloud provider code, so that the cloud provider code had literally been compiled out.
But were you asking if I could take the task of setting up like the job for it or whatever? Is that what you were asking?
Well, I was thinking I'm essentially saying I can probably get Ben the Elder to help someone, but I don't know who to get him to help.
Yeah, if you can connect him with me, that I'd love to do more there. Fair warning, I'm going to be not quite as fast as what we're used to with Dims and the crew, but I would like to learn more of that stuff. So yeah.
Well, and I can also reach out to Antonio, but okay. Yeah, let me chat with Ben and let's see what we can do on that front.
Awesome. Yeah.
I've been on this project for 4 years. I'm really looking forward to the day where we literally just delete all the cloud provider code out of KK.
Yeah, it's gonna be a glorious day, right?
What's also funny, I mean, did you see the early analysis? Like, I think we cut the size of the binaries by somewhere between like 50 and 80%.
Wow.
Yeah.
that's ridiculous, but like that's seriously cool. All right. Anything else on that topic? Or I don't know, Nick, did you have I can toss a link to that review in the notes here if you got it.
I do have it. Yeah, let me I posted it in SIG Cloud Provider Slack channel.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay.
So Walter, this is the automatically creating the webhook configuration. I don't know if you remember talking about that.
I do. I absolutely do. That's awesome. And then do we actually have sort of the relevant webhook anywhere?
I don't think so, not yet. We need to
Okay,
pick that up.
that's fine. Awesome.
Cool.
All right, cool. Anything else we should cover? All right, I'm not hearing anything. So going in 3, 2, 1. All right. Thanks for coming out, everyone. See you next Wednesday for the full SIG meeting, and have a good weekend.
See ya.
Later.